Hey folks, welcome, welcome, welcome. We're going to get started in just a second. You are at What's the Plan? Let us know where you're coming in from. Ann Arbor, out the gate, John. You are here. Jeff, you've already asked a question. You had that ready to go. It looked like that was copy pasted. We're going to let everybody come in. It is going fast. Oh my
Oh my
gosh.
goodness. Hello,
Here we
everybody.
go.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
Just so you know,
Okay.
there are more people that have registered for this What's the Plan than ever before, which is actually a record we keep on breaking, but I think there were more than
Yeah.
13,000 people registered for this one.
13,200 the last I saw.
Who's
So we'll
counting
see
though?
how many
Who's
folks log
counting?
on.
Okay, wait. We've got Petaluma, California, Rockville, Maryland, Logan,
Utah,
Utah, Katy,
Katy,
Texas,
Texas,
Santa Fe, New Mexico, Jeff
Louisville,
in
Kentucky,
Oakland, Carson City, another
Annapolis,
Oakland,
Maryland,
Annapolis,
Denver,
Denver, exclamation
Poughkeepsie,
points.
Bowie, Maryland, Bloomfield, New Jersey, Rochester, Athens, Georgia. I see some folks from DC. Hey, folks from DC, we are with you. Columbus, Indiana, California, El Cerrito, California, Howard County, Maryland, Indivisible. Let's see. Oh, it's going here. We've lost the scroll, Ezra.
The scroll is scrolling
The
so
scroll is
fast.
scrolling too fast.
Show us the new messages. Bob from Santa Barbara, La Vista, Marlboro,
Boston,
Boston,
Massachusetts. That's cute.
Massachusetts. Great to see you. Great to see you,
Mhm.
Connie.
Should we
Leah,
get started?
yeah, I think let's get started. We got a lot of people here. We got a lot of questions out there. We got a lot of things happening in this country right now. A lot of, I don't know, I would say kind of like an autocratic flavor is what I'm tasting in the country right now.
Things happening.
I don't know if folks saw, Trump is going on his little photo op tour of Washington, D.C. with his little goon squad, the same as the vice president did recently. They're making the most of that. Notably, he issued a big executive order today not to release the Epstein files. I believe, I just wrote a whole piece on how not everything in authoritarianism is a distraction. I do think there's quite a bit of distraction going on, though, right now, you see out there. But welcome. We are here for What's the Plan? This is What's the Plan with me, Ezra.
And I'm Leah.
And we have a beautiful new background that Leah, you get most of the credit for putting together. Although there is no guitar, I'm working on it, y'all. We're going to try to incorporate it somehow. Um, uh, we're the co-founders, co-executive directors of Indivisible, but we are not the leaders of this movement. This movement is led by local leaders all across the country who see the authoritarian breakthrough moment, see not just the right-wing agenda, but the attack on universities and media and businesses and nonprofits and law firms and say, well, I got to do something. What can I do? And you're coming to the right conclusion, which is I've got to organize locally. What we know from his historic and international fights against authoritarianism is there is no special solution out there that anybody has devised that doesn't depend on local community organizing a community to fight back, demonstrating courage and spreading courage in the face of real authoritarian threats. So that's the basic idea behind what we are all doing together here. And this is a space where we get to talk about how do we do that? How do we actually do that? Not just talk in the like high-minded terms, but what's the practical solution strategically, tactically, messaging-wise, organizing-wise? That's what we try to get into here, and I hope we get into a lot of good questions. I see them already coming in. Part of Indivisible's philosophy, as you all know, is that we are not a movement of just individuals. We are a movement of local indivisible groups. You can Google image search Indivisible logo. You will find the national logo. It's great. You can buy a shirt with it on or a hat. That's fine. More importantly, you scroll through, you will see hundreds of local indivisible logos from all over the country because these are locally led, owned and operated by local volunteers who are building up powerhouses in communities in red states, blue states, and purple states. And so one of the things we like to do on these What the Plan calls is start out by congratulating and welcoming the brand new Indivisible groups who have joined because it continues to be the case, Leah. What, 8 months into this administration, it continues to be the case that around 5 new Indivisible groups join every freaking day. Every day, new groups are forming, and I love it. I love it. You sense the heartbeat of the movement out there when I go through these every week. So I'm going to go through quickly, but just to celebrate and welcome these new members.
You got too many.
I know, Leah. So I'm going to go through fast. Okay, here we go. Michaela from Indivisible Colma, California, south of San Francisco. Welcome. Deb from Indivisible East Lyme on the water in Connecticut. Allison from Jefferson County Indivisible. Give them some love in the chat. Give them some love in the emojis. This is in Mount Vernon, Illinois. Janet, Crescent Hill Indivisible, Louisville, Kentucky. Rosemary from Indivisible Falmouth in Massachusetts. This is on the water in Cape Cod. We've got Megan from Kent County Indivisible in Rockford, Michigan. This is north of Grand Rapids. Josephine, Highland Park Indivisible, and their full name is Highland Park Indivisible, a bias towards action. I love that. I have a bias towards action. We all have a bias towards action. So that stood out. That's in Highland Park, New Jersey, southwest of the city. Adam with Indivisible Fayette in Uniontown, Pennsylvania. I thought Uniontown very apropos because we're headed into Labor Day and big protest. We'll talk about that in a sec. Maxwell with Indivisible Vanderbilt in Nashville, Tennessee. We've got a lot of college town-based chapters actually around the country. We see a lot of Indivisible groups forming in college towns. And then Constantinos with Indivisible Brazoria County in Angleton, Texas. This is just south of Houston. Hey, it's great to have all y'all. As you can, if you're brand new, this is what it's like. There are little pockets of opposition, little pockets of courage popping up all over the country. And what this is laddering up to is statewide and nationwide opposition that is changing what's politically possible. I know it's a scary time, but we're all doing what we can where we are. And in that vein, I want to highlight an Indivisible group in Alaska. Did y'all catch this ridiculous Putin-Trump summit in Alaska? Absolutely absurd, a real terrible mark on our country's history that we're inviting this vicious state leader over to our country, but we did. He did not have a warm welcome in Alaska. Leah, did you see these pictures?
I know I did.
Oh, it was incredible. So the line, like where Putin's cars were going down to meet with Trump, just lines of people with Ukrainian flags and with messages of support for Ukraine. I want to call out the incredible folks over at Alaskans. What is it?
Stand Up Alaska.
It's Stand Up Alaska. That's right. Stand Up Alaska in downtown Anchorage. They were just minutes away from the summit that was held. I know it was them and a lot of other groups, but congratulations on that work. You got a ton of coverage of that. I think you sent a really clear message that while Donald Trump might be a friend of autocrats, the American people are not, and the folks in Alaska aren't. So thank you. Thank you for showing us what it looks like to stand up in the face of two authoritarians. Really is an inspiring act of courage. Leah, a little bit about why we're here and how this works.
What are we doing here? This is our weekly What's the Plan, where we talk about what is happening and what our actual plan is for pushing back, fighting back, and protecting our democracy. This is going to be Q&A mostly once we get done with this kind of opening conversation. Overwhelmingly live. So if you've got a question, put it in the Q&A box in your little toolbar at the bottom of your screen. You can upvote the questions that you want to see. We're going to answer questions mostly from the top of that list of questions. So vote if you want to see your question answered. This will be recorded. It will be posted on our YouTube page. We will send out a link to everybody who registered. We're also going to send out all of the links that we mentioned, the calls to action, the resources, etc. All of that is going to be in the follow-up email that you get. So if the chat is going too fast and you cannot get the link that you need, don't worry, it is coming to you eventually. Finally, just a general note on respect. We cover a lot of really hard stuff here. We cover a would-be authoritarian consolidating control and threatening everyone who stands in his way and doing an enormous amount of harm. And a lot of that is incredibly personal to people on this call. So our ask is that we are constructive, that we are supportive, that we lift each other up. These are hard times. We are only going to get through it if we get through it together. And so we got to lean into that shared solidarity and empathy. So keep the chat box supportive and respectful.
That's right. One thing that we do on these calls, you'll notice we're kind of zooming through because we want to get to Q&A. In previous surveys that we've done, we try to do a survey after most of these calls, I would say. There was a demand for spend more time on the questions and less time up front. So we're trying to keep to that. We're going to do another survey after this call. It'll come out right after this call or early tomorrow. It's going to focus on No Kings 2. It's going to focus on No Kings 2. Not ready yet to fully announce. We're working with the coalition partners, but it's coming pretty soon. So please keep a lookout for that email coming in your inbox and give us some input, because we legitimately use this to drive the team in one direction or another. We get hundreds or sometimes thousands of responses. That's okay. We sort through it, we look through it, and we try to use this. So it is actual. It's a real question. It's not just let's just ask some question because we want more engagement. No, we're trying to suss out where the movement is. So keep a lookout for that. One thing I also want to flag that came up in last week's conversation was a request for training on security for Indivisible groups. We heard you. I promised that we would follow up. I want to be clear. We're not forgetting about that. We've started some internal conversations. We're going to have more announcements coming soon on this. So please just hang tight for a bit, but know that we're not dropping that off. When I say we're going to follow something up on something, I do try to follow up on it again. So we will soon. With that said, we're trying to shift into, rather than just having a long soliloquy about, hey, news of the day, we want to focus in on what's the plan. And that means action items. So Leah, you've got a couple of specific action items for this week that you want to focus in on. You want to take us through?
Yeah, sure. So we are continuing to get report outs from community conversations coming out of the 1 Million Rising series. If you have not watched all three parts of 1 Million Rising, they are available on our YouTube, and they are incredible. And they are sparking some great conversations all over the country. We know that because we're hearing some of your report backs. I want to highlight a couple of the national campaigns that we've identified as part of that 1 Million Rising that we're carrying forward. The first, Ground to Velo. So this is not new. I know there are a bunch of people on this call who have already been part of actions around Avelo Airlines, which is a commercial airline that is running deportation flights for the Trump administration. But we are throwing in collectively to make sure that they experience serious, real consequences for their support and their enablement of this incredibly inhumane deportation agenda. So check out groundavelo.org for how you can get involved there. And then standing against ICE with signs of solidarity. So this is a visual saturation tactic. The basic idea here is that we are going to our local businesses, we are going to our local storefronts, and we are asking them, one, to understand what their rights are in terms of making sure ICE accessing their premises and coming in, and then two, to post a sign that makes clear that this is a business that does not support or welcome ICE on the premises, and that we stand in solidarity with our immigrant neighbors and immigrant communities. And so the basic idea here is, one, it is practical and useful because it actually starts to create that, ensure that education and those conversations are happening, but it's also a visual demonstration and a repudiation of the Trump administration and a normalization of strategic non-cooperation with their secret police. So those are some really crucial action items. Oh, and I want to add one additional one. We're going to get into what happened last night with Texas's passage of the new maps, but the passage of the new maps means that we've got to really renew the effort to fight the redistricting coup with our new toolkit. We have got a new toolkit. Oh, Ezra, do you want me to turn it over to you?
No, you finish up.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, great. We've got a new toolkit that's going to be focusing particularly on what you can do if you are in a blue state where there is an option to redistrict in response. If you are in a red state, exposing the injustice and the power grab here. We got it all. So please check out that toolkit and see how you can plug in. Everyone's got a role to play.
You want to cover this last one?
Sure. Yeah, and then Labor Day. I know a bunch of folks here are planning to show up for Labor Day actions over the course of the next week and a half. We are super excited to be throwing in with our friends at the May Day Coalition and with the AFL around May Day actions all over the country. We know that this is everything from mass mobilizations to picnics and social gatherings all over the place. We're really excited to be part of that. As folks know, a really core part of how we build that big tent is kind of deep ties with our friends in labor, and we want to make sure that we're collectively honoring the labor movement and our own role as workers who are actually, the folks who are doing the real work in this country and who deserve better than what we are collectively getting from the Trump administration. So if you have not found your event, please find your event and get ready to show up.
And just to underline, Leah said this earlier, everything that we just talked about now going to be follow-up email, so you'll get links to all of this. But to repeat, it is the Avelo Airlines campaign. It's signed with solidarity. It is the work on the redistricting around the country, and it is the Labor Day mobilization. So those four things, big to-dos this week. We'll have more next week, and you'll get those links. You can see them in the chat, but the chat's going too fast. Don't worry. We're going to follow up with the information. And if you're ever wondering, you can always go to indivisible.org and find all these action items. Okay, Leah, should we go to Q&A?
Yeah.
Okay, we are to the top asked question. Daphne, Daphne, you were dethroned, and now Dory has taken over with 306 votes. So we're going to go with Dory, but we'll go to you next. Dory asks, why was the heroic Texas Rep. Nicole Collier the only one of the 50 Democratic representatives to refuse to sign the Republican demand for them to be minded by a law enforcement officer, North Korean style, Northridge Indivisible? Oh, hey, Northridge Indivisible in Greater Los Angeles. Well, Leah, do you have? So my thought on this is, when there are leaders who are breaking new ground and trying new tactics, often often it will be one who is out there. I think about Chris Van Hollen earlier this year, who the entire political system wanted to ignore what was happening in El Salvador, did not want to talk about Abrego Garcia. And Chris Van Hollen basically said, I don't care. I think this is the right thing to do. I should go there. And he went there. And it sometimes takes one leader to say, no, actually, I'm going to make a stand here. And that is a catalytic event. I don't think the Texas rep was um, uh, like going against the other Texas reps. I give a lot of credit to those Texas rep who broke quorum and actually risked a fair amount leaving the state in order to break quorum and fight against the maps. I think when we talk about courage being contagious, that doesn't mean that you have one set of people who fight the fight forever and are on the front lines forever. What it means is you hope that they fight the fight, it raises the alarm, other people see it, and then other people fight the fight. And that's what's happened in Texas. They broke quorum for a few weeks and they raised the alarm nationwide. They went back after they got assurances from governors in Illinois and New York and in California and elsewhere that there was going to be a fight. That's courage spreading. That is what the contagion of courage looks like in the real world. I think with this Texas rep, I would give her a lot of credit for standing up and fighting this fight and raising the alarm even further. I don't view this as like a schism between her and the other Dems. I view this as really honorable demonstration of courage from her that we should celebrate and highlight with the hope that other people then demonstrate courage as well. So I don't view this as conflict, I guess is what I would say.
And I will note that some of them did come back and stand with her after her inspiring first night. I think we can both honor the like tremendous courage and sacrifice that it took for Rep Collier to stand up and say no and to be the only person doing that, and also kind of like recognize that in those moments someone steps forward and then other people follow them. So let's give her her flowers. Let's recognize the
Yes.
courage, the risk. It is not a small thing to have the entire like functional police state of Texas breathing down your neck and to say no. And then it's incumbent on the rest of us, like regular people, as well as the other legislators who are just getting home, to stand with her.
Yep. Daphne asks, you're back up, Daphne. A recent story by David Kirkpatrick in the New Yorker showed that Trump and his family have profited about $3.5 billion and counting from his presidency. How is this legal? What is the recourse for American citizens for this heinous use of the office of the presidency? I mean, seriously, what the fuck? That's a reasonable
pretty
response.
good summary of the situation. Yeah.
You want to talk about crypto, Leah?
Sure. I mean, look, the short answer is this is absolutely bananas. It is unprecedented, staggering, jaw-dropping levels of corruption. And as with the first Trump presidency, in which there was quite a bit of corruption that was like on a, it was I hesitate to say on a smaller scale because it's still like hundreds of millions and or billions of dollars. If there's not accountability for actions taken,
Yes.
then there's going to be more.
Yes.
And fundamentally, Donald Trump is engineering a system in which he is taking actions and he is systematically consolidating power so that there's not any meaningful check or opposition. That is what is happening right now. And what we see with crypto, we see this with kind of his shakedowns of universities. We see this across the board. Like he is acting collectively to try to consolidate his own power and to like enrich his own coffers and to shut down any mechanism that might hold him accountable. So it's a great question. Like, why aren't there mechanisms? And also, like, honestly, the mechanisms are us at this point.
I mean, there was another mechanism, just so, not to harp on the crypto bill, but there was a piece of crypto legislation that was sailing through Congress earlier this year. Indivisible, among other folks opposed it. Elizabeth Warren was trying to lead the charge against it. It was pushed forward under the guise that it would help consumers. But let me tell you something. If somebody says something helps consumers and Elizabeth Warren, the architect of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, is out there saying, no, this hurts consumers and it hurts middle-class families, you know what? I think I'm going to side with Elizabeth Warren on this one. So this piece of legislation was sailing through. There were ideas put forward for the legislation specifically to constrain Trump's ability to self-enrich through crypto if this legislation went through. And Democrats who were behind this piece of legislation, Ruben Gallego specifically was asked about this, Are you going to push this kind of provision forward that prevents Trump from taking more bribes through crypto? And his response was pretty blunt. Well, the Republicans aren't going to go for that. And so we're not going to put it forward. So instead of demanding that any kind of legislation related to crypto prevents Trump from taking additional bribes, the Democrats just dropped it from the negotiation. We had more than 100 Democrats in the House vote for this legislation. We had a dozen or more in the Senate vote for this legislation. In the absence of Democratic support, it would have died. It couldn't have gotten through the Senate. It would have been filibustered. It might not have gotten through the House, depending on how things shook out. But it did. And now this legislation is law and is allowing Trump to take in additional bribes through crypto. And so we have to ask ourselves, do we have a Democratic Party that is actually organized to fight back against this authoritarian, or do we have a Democratic Party that is largely treating this moment as standard operating procedure politics? We have a lot of good fighters in this party. I just talked about Chris Van Hollen, but he's not alone. There's Jamie Raskin, there's Jasmine Crockett, there's Chris Murphy. There are a lot of good fighters in this party, but it's not only made up of fighters. It's made up of some folks who need a nudge, who need to be pushed, who need to understand that their constituents want fight back in the party. And we got to demand that. So I see this story and I say, yeah, that's bad. What can we do about it? The answer is, well, we can actually push Dems to fight back and not enable this at the very least.
I'm just gonna add one editorial point on that as well. I think a really reasonable question, like any normal person would have, is why is this not a massive political liability that just fundamentally detonates Donald Trump's career? And part of the reason when you dig into how Americans understand corruption is there's just an enormous level of cynicism about corruption in politics in general, right? And most people, if you look at the polling data on this and the focus groups and whatever, they think all politicians are corrupt and Republicans are just better at it, okay? And so, and they're not, they have some examples to point to on our side that have not been adequately addressed by the Democratic Party that they're looking at there, right? And so I think that when we talk about how would you actually make this consistently a political liability, you've got to start with, like, how do Democrats clean house so that there's a genuine contrast and a genuine sense that one party is actually genuinely hostile to corruption, whereas the other one is facilitating it.
Clean house is a phrase we've been kicking around a lot. I do think that as we head into primary season, as we're trying to build a strong Democratic Party that is a true opposition party, cleaning house is top of mind because we need the public to understand that there's one fascist corrupt party and there's one party that's fighting for them. And we don't yet have that. We've got to build that.
That's right.
Okay, Jeff asks, Jeff from Indivisible Oregon. Hey, Indivisible Oregon. We saw big engagement on our Blue Sky critique of coverage normalizing the admin Smithsonian intervention. How can we scale effective media accountability beyond dunking, e.g. coordinated letters to the editors and op-ed blitzes, editor advertiser pressure, and praise pressure campaigns? Could Indivisible share a rapid response toolkit, targets, frames, contacts, and a channel to sync groups for same-day action and measure impact? That is a great question, Jeff.
It's a great question,
Yeah.
and I'm just going to be candid. Sometimes when somebody has a pretty well developed idea of what should happen, I'm going to say probably, like, I like that. I think it's great. I don't think we're on the verge of getting that up and running within Indivisible National on the timeline that, like, even maybe y'all could. And so in this moment, I want to encourage folks who have an idea that other groups could pick up and run with for good targeted pressure campaigns to also think about how could you build that out yourselves and invite other groups into it, because fundamentally I think this is a great idea. I'd love us to look into it. I also want folks, I know there are a lot of people in this movement who have capacity, are eager to do things, are sophisticated advocates and strategists and campaigners, and I want to encourage you all to start thinking about, like, could we build this out and start inviting other people to join it, and maybe we promote it for you.
I love that, Leah. And so, Jeff, here's what not to pass the buck, but I would recommend getting in touch with Hannah, your statewide organizer for Oregon. They were great. They were over at the statewide convening in Washington that I attended, and it was an excellent convening. If y'all cook up something there, flag it for us, and we can help elevate it, and maybe other groups can take it up and innovate off of it. I love that as an idea.
Yeah.
Okay, Joyce asks, Ezra and Leah, I see people all around me who hate what Donald Trump is doing to our democracy, but they aren't doing anything, haven't joined the resistance movement, aren't making calls, aren't going to any protests other than the very largest ones, such as No Kings and Hands Off. Why is this? They say, I don't have the time. I invited these people to 1 Million Rising, where they learned a lot, but they still do not participate. This is such,
This is a great question.
this is like a key organizing question. I love this question, which is basically how do we engage more people? Can I just, Leah, I'm going to let you do a substantive answer, but just to open.
Yeah.
Let me say, I think this question of how do we get more people in is absolutely core to what we are all doing. We have hosted two of the largest protests in American history in the last 3 or 4 months. That's Hands Off and No Kings, as you've listed. No Kings had somewhere between 5 and 6 million people. If you're a believer in Erica Chenoweth and Maria Steffen's work around 3.5%, where you need 3.5% of people in the country actively engaged in organizing, that would put the numbers we need at somewhere around 11 or 12 million. That's within reach. That's within reach, but it's larger than what we've had so far. So this question of how do we get more people in the movement is not just like a, yeah, we would like more people here. This is a core strategic question for us because if we don't recruit more people, we're not going to be big enough. So with that throat clearing, Leah, what are your thoughts on how do we actually loop people in a way that substantively engages them?
Yeah, I have a couple of thoughts. First, part of what we are going to try to do, part of what we're going to continue to try to do is create an identity, right? Create a shared identity as a pro-democracy movement. Create, ask people to wear a button so that they feel like they're a little bit more part of this, so that they feel like they actually have to do something the next time someone calls them. Think about ways that you invite people in that are really, really low lifts, so that they maybe feel a little bit more bought into their identity as somebody who shows up, somebody who does something. And like they don't want to lose that the next time they're asked for something that's a little bit more of a high lift. So one, think about like the very, very low lift asks that are just about identifying yourself as part of the movement. Then two, I think a lot of times we kind of try to move people straight from like casual attendee to like very high order, leadership really fast. And I would think about more carefully, like one-on-ones with those people, understand what they're good at, understand what energizes them, ask them if they would like to be a little bit involved on this committee, ask them if they'd like to be helping with X thing. A lot of times there's like a little bit of a mismatch between what people think they're supposed to be doing if they join an activist home and like the actual things that you can get them to do to have them more involved, right? I think about this as like I'm an introvert, right? And a lot of the things that we think of as like the outward manifestations of activism, I would be terrified of if you asked me to do those things, right? And so, but if somebody asked me like, hey, would you take notes at the next meeting? I'd be like, yeah, sure. Da, 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 da. So think about like actually getting to know the people that you have as targets for more further involvement, have a one-on-one with them, understand what motivates them, understand what they think they're good at and what gives them energy, and try to invite them in a way that like leans into those things, so it doesn't feel like you're asking them to both step into politics and to do something that's out of their comfort zone at the same time. And then later you can ask them to do something out of their comfort zone.
I would also take advantage of the upcoming mass mobilization. So whether that is if you're participating in Labor Day, like if there's something they can do in the prep to that,
Yeah.
or once we start building into No King's Day, there's going to be a lot of work to spread around, to spread the message, to recruit, to train people up, to get prepared, figure out a role that they can do that they can own.
Yeah.
Like one of the things we have found is if somebody is asked to do a specific thing that is within their control to do, they're more likely to do that. And if it's just like a generic menu of activities and they've got to pick, it might be more difficult to get them in. So building in new leadership opportunities for newbies to your group, I think is a really powerful way to build up capacity.
Just to note, a lot of people did poster making events in advance of like a No Kings, and that's actually like a great, like, most people are not intimidated by like show up and make a poster, right? So, it's another way to bring people in, get a little bit more of a social connectivity, and then call them up afterwards.
I'm going to just take a quick break from the democratically voted questions to go to. We got a couple questions from group leaders, Leah, that came in ahead of time. I'm going to pull them over. One, we'll start with the one from Indivisible Las Vegas, who asked, last week, League of Women Voters, which is a quote unquote nonpartisan organization, released a statement against redistricting and commented against Gavin Newsom's announcement of California redistricting plans, basically saying, sure, Texas and Republican-led states are doing this, but Democrats shouldn't push back with their own redistricting. What are our thoughts on this?
Yeah.
Like, how should we be responding to purportedly nonpartisan and pro-democracy organizations who disagree that Democratic states should be responding in kind?
It's actually, I want to read the actual question because I think it's actually, it's we can talk about it in this context about redistricting, but I actually think it's like a really important strategic insight.
Yeah.
While not one of the named pillars of support in the 1 Million Rising movement, what do you think about an organized effort to call out purportedly nonpartisan organizations that don't appear to support the pro-democracy fight?
Yeah.
And I think that's a really fascinating question.
Yeah.
Because,
okay, great. Yeah.
Because it's like in terms of League of Women Voters, look, if you're part of League of Women Voters, absolutely express your take on that. I know there's a bunch of overlap. There are a lot of indivisibles. There's a lot of like cohesion, or there's a lot of folks who might be mutually involved or in partnership with your local League of Women Voters. I bet they're working this through themselves in real time, and so absolutely worth conversations if you're part of that group. Simultaneously, I think this is a bigger problem because, when we talk about the chilling effect that has taken hold across American society in law firms and corporations and whatever, nonprofits, not remotely immune, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
are
right.
particularly like, we're a progressive nonprofit. Like, it's our job to be out there in the fight against Trump. There are a lot of organizations, and I'm not going to name names on this call because I haven't prepared to do that yet. But there are organizations that should be signing that sign-on letter that defends basic democratic values that are not signing on to that sign-on letter that defends basic democratic values. And look, I'm not going to say that sign-on letters are like they're one of those things that's not necessarily that important on its own, but it's a really bad sign if you're like nonprofits that, if you're nonprofits that have some kind of job upholding some value in American society are afraid to in any way anger the administration. That is scary. And so I think this is actually a really good point. Like, you've got local nonprofits. Are they actually saying something about standing in solidarity with communities? You've got local nonprofits that might be involved in service delivery. Like, what are they doing? How are they thinking about this? Have they been engaged? Are you a stakeholder within an organization? Like, I'm just going to go for a target that I name a couple of times, the Anti-Defamation League, which ostensibly defends American Jews, but has regularly been lending its support to the Trump administration's campaign against universities in the name of shutting down criticism of Israel. These are the kinds of targets where, if you're a stakeholder within them, absolutely you should be organizing and pushing them either to stop doing harm or onto the field.
Great. Just going into the next question, which connects a bit to this. Carpinteria Indivisible, which is in California, Carol asks, what is the one best thing we can do to support Governor Newsom's election rigging response act? And so for folks who aren't tracking, it's a somewhat laborious process in California to move forward with redistricting now because they have an independent redistricting commission. There needs to be a vote of the entire state to allow for this to happen. And Newsom is moving forward to try to make this happen. We have an entire resource which we can put in the chat, but we'll also follow up on specifically on what states can do in response to what Texas is doing. And actually has done because they passed the map. So I would encourage you to take a look at that resource. But at a very basic level, this is now a campaign. And this isn't a campaign for the midterms. This is a campaign for this year. And it's up in the air whether Californians will endorse this. And if Californians vote it down, California will not move forward with this. So you should treat this as you would any other candidate campaign. You should build support in your community for this bill when there are folks like the League of Women Voters or anybody else saying, well, sure, they did that, but don't we support a different approach to this? You should push back and say, no, we're going to fight for our democracy. And if we're not willing to fight back, then we're going to lose it. We cannot unilaterally disarm. So we all have, in California, you have a unique role. Not just for California, you're fighting for all of American democracy because there aren't a lot of states out there that can actually do what California can do right now. So I would encourage you, again, take a look at the resource, get plugged into this campaign because it's fast moving. Next question is from Polly, and I'll go to the group leader question in a bit. But when is our next massive show like No Kings 2? I'm still a fan of a redo of Hands Across America from 1986. We've talked about Hands Across America actually on this call before.
And some people have been doing some amazing Hands Across events, which actually takes us to our next question.
Yeah, I know of a few local Indivisible groups who have achieved 3 miles in Chicago or 8 miles in Ohio. We need to go big. One of the challenges, just to say a peek behind the curtain, we discussed like replicating a Hands Across America a few times or for a while at Indivisible. One of the challenges is it is hard to do it in a way that actually incorporates every single state, because you'd have this big old windy line and it's just a logistical nightmare, rather than just doing, right across the center of the country, or across one of the down on the coast. So it's why it's hard to do that nationally. We've seen cities and states do it, and it gets a lot of press. I think it's a good idea. But as for next big massive show, no King's 2, no King's 2's coming, y'all. I'm not yet ready to fully launch. We are making plans to soft launch to Indivisible group. So if you're a group leader, you'll get a heads up, so you can start preparing before there's a big national launch. We've worked out with partners a date. We are getting there, so stay tuned. It is coming. It is going to be big. We want it to be as big or bigger as No Kings 1, which was, again, one of the largest protests in American history, and I think we'll get there. I think we will get there. So, Polly, I know you're chomping at the bit here. We are too. If you just can't wait, I would recommend making plans to show up on Labor Day, because that'll be a good time to show up in partnership with our allies and in opposition to Trump and MAGA and the authoritarian takeover. But then also we're going to have No King soon. So please stay tuned. Christine asks, will you help us spark a nationwide Hands Across America for Democracy? We just talked. I would love, I'm into doing this in localities, is what I would say. I think if you're doing this in New Jersey, if you're doing this in Ohio, if you're doing this across your state or your city, let us know, let your organizer know. I think these are good opportunities to raise this up. Christine, you're doing this right now. I see it, September 17th, so I'm advertising Hands Across America for Democracy. There's Hands Across New Jersey on Constitution Day. This is what Christine is talking about. So if you are in New Jersey and you want to be part of this 80-mile human chain, reach out to the folks over there in Resistance Alliance. This is in Hawthorne, New Jersey. I love that. Once I see it coming together, we can try to advertise it also from Indivisible National's platforms. Okay, next question. We got Gilda in Falls Church, Indivisible. We the People for a future national protest. We the People might be a good title. The first three words of the Constitution, we the people. We need to be reminded, we the people. So it's an argument for a tagline. A tagline, and also I think you're pointing out something important here, Gilda, which is how much hands off was a big tent and how much No Kings was a big tent. People could bring their top concern for why they were coming together on the hands off day, on the No Kings day. And there's also an embrace of patriotism, an embrace of the flag, an embrace of Americana. The fascists don't own the flag. The fascists don't own patriotism. This is our country. This is our flag. This is our country. And embracing that orientation, we believe, is a great way to build as big of a tent as possible and make people feel proud of the work that they're doing. So very with you on that. We're working on different taglines, but I hear you on We the People. It's got some support.
Okay, when will Indivisible target the Democratic Party as enablers and a pillar of support for the Trump GOP authoritarian project? Democrats have consistently failed. When do we demand new leadership? I think that covers the content. Yep.
I mean, just to know, we have demanded new leadership. I believe Indivisible is the only national organization to have organized a movement-wide call on Chuck Schumer's leadership back in March when they caved on the funding bill. We took an emergency vote of Indivisible leaders. I believe we had about 1,300 on that call the Saturday after he caved to Republican demands on the funding bill. 92% said we should call for Chuck Schumer to step down. I called him and said we were calling for him to step down, and then we called for him to step down. I believe we do need new leadership. I don't think the people who got us into this mess are the same people who are going to get us out of it. I think there is a divide in the party right now where we have some really great fighters, and we've got some folks who are treating this as politics as usual. And the party isn't some monolith out there. The party isn't some external thing that is operating on its own. The party is all of us. It is an external thing, but it's also us. It's what we do. It's how we engage. And if we want the party to be better, we can't just point a finger at it and say, be better. We've got to do the work to organize and demand a better party. We get the party that we demand, and we should be demanding better. The good news is this. We're headed into a primary season right now, y'all. We're headed into a season where we get to determine who are the leaders of this party. And we should be discriminating when it comes to those leaders. We should ask ourselves, is this the person we want leading us into this fight? Now, Indivisible National does not parachute into districts or states and say, that's the primary champion. We don't do that. We believe that local should lead. What we do is support locals in doing that work. So if you are part of an indivisible group in a congressional district or in a state, and you think there's an opportunity to take on somebody who's really a backbencher, who's not fighting the fight, you should be organizing right now. And everybody should do that based on the political realities in their state, in their district.
I agree with that. I'm just going to add on that, like, when Ezra says we should be organizing, I bet there's somebody on this call who should be running. Like,
Yeah.
there are a lot of folks on this call who are leaders in your own community, who are trusted and respected, who are teachers, who are organizers. And there are a lot of places where I have heard directly from many of you that you are really frustrated with your elected representation. And so if that's you, like, figure out whether you should be organizing, figure out whether there's someone you know who should be running, figure out whether you yourself should be running, because fundamentally the way we actually get to a meaningful shift in the Democratic Party is through primaries. There's like not another path.
Yeah, that's right. You're here, Leah. Amy asks, I've been studying the documentaries about the Freedom Riders.
This actually doesn't look like it's a question.
Well, the Freedom Riders are great.
The Freedom Riders are great.
The Baton Rouge boycotts. People are trying to replicate. What was the book that we were talking about earlier before, Leah?
The Children.
Oh,
the Children. The younger generation of the civil rights movement.
Highly recommend.
Okay, so so I think this is just mentioning the importance of understanding the civil rights movement here in America, for understanding the moment that we're in, the strategies, the tactics, kind of the like innovations within that movement. And I think that is a really important point that I think we can sometimes skip over, because we've got a lot of content talking about other countries that are taking on authoritarian dictatorships, right? Fundamentally, a lot of those countries, like, their lessons came from the American civil rights movement confronting racial apartheid in America and authoritarianism in America. So I think, like, it's important for us to note that, because in some ways what we are looking at is tactics, strategies, kinds of attacks, kinds of repression that are well entrenched within our own history, and that frankly aren't even that are like pretty familiar to folks who have been operating in southern states red states this entire time.
Yeah. I'm going to go to the other question that came in ahead of time from an Indivisible group, the Powerhouse Indivisible group, Civic Engagement Beyond Voting out in Arizona. And I asked the team about this, but Catherine asks, I've heard and believe that Trump is a useful idiot and chaos agent, allowing but not directing Project 2025 to be implemented government-wide. Stephen Miller and Russell Vogt are living their best lives while letting Trump and his true acolytes, Bondi, Noam, Patel, carry out his pet projects such as revenge and tariffs. Who are the more obscure people in the government who are actually directing policies and actions to implement the authoritarian and Christian nationalist takeover? It's a great question, Catherine. I had some ideas, but I asked the team, like, who are the people that nobody is talking about in the administration who are doing a lot of damage behind the scenes? And I thought we could take a second just to name some names if people are interested.
Wow. It's going to take a while.
It's going to take a while. Andrew O'Neill, our National Director of Advocacy. I was talking about the BLS director, who's this awful, I don't know, the white nationalist hack. But he is not yet appointed. He's got to go through Senate confirmation. We'll see how that turns out. But Alina Habba, the U.S. Attorney in New Jersey, who is just a Trump toady, and he is appointing to consecutive temporary terms to avoid having to actually go through Senate confirmation because she couldn't get confirmed. Ed Martin, the formerly corrupt U.S. Attorney for D.C., currently corrupt U.S. Pardon Attorney, head of Pam Bondi's Weaponization Working Group. Bill Pulte, who's director of the Federal Housing Finance Agency. He's consolidated control of Fannie and Freddie and named himself chairman, doing a lot of damage over there. We've got Paula White Cain, a right-wing evangelical and one of Trump's leaders of Trump's White House Faith Office, which is certainly an oxymoron of some sort, maybe a couple. It's essentially just a white nationalism office at the White House. We've got Brendan Carr, who is the chair of the FCC. He's basically just doing flat out extortion of any company in his jurisdiction. Tom Homan, who's the border czar. You've probably seen a lot of bad stuff about him. He's a little bit more in the news. Todd Lyons, acting director of ICE, also one of these villains in the administration. Dan Bongino, who's the deputy FBI director. Also, I read something recently that he has to be babysat because he's just doing a lot of incompetent things.
Yeah, who could have predicted that putting a podcaster in charge of large parts of the FBI would go poorly?
But So to this question, I think there are a lot of folks who get a lot of attention, and unfortunately, there are a lot of other folks doing a lot of damage who are not getting a lot of attention. One thing we might think about is putting together like a who's who of the administration and the damage that they're doing, just to demystify what it looks like behind the scenes.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I question. I will say, I think it's valuable to learn about this stuff, but I also think that you can get a little bit down a rabbit hole of like, we actually don't need to know the names of everybody who's involved to understand that this is like a political project stocked with hacks and criminals who are collectively operating relatively smoothly to implement that agenda. And that's what we need to know to devise the strategy to stop it.
Fair point. Sarah asks, so Lee, you were on a call last night,
Yeah.
which you can talk about, but she said, great job last night. In the future, can we discuss the power of the states? I was surprised at the angles and the strategies that the states have within their toolkits, eager to begin a new letter writing campaign, um, uh, not allowing National Guard from other states to interstate without governor's approval, secret police laws, et cetera, et cetera. Oh, and I don't know if folks saw this, Stephen Miller talking about the quote, old white hippies need to go home and take a nap because they're all over 90 years old. Leah, do you want to talk about the call you were on and then respond to Sarah's question?
I'm just gonna make a comment about how Stephen Miller looks like he's 90 years old because being that evil ages you very fast, but nonetheless, um, don't get me started. Okay, discussing the power of states. Yes, absolutely. Well, have we got a project for you? We're gonna link Blue State Defiance in the chat. This is our website specifically focused on how blue states can exert their power in order to defy, in order to delay, in order to counteract some of the damage that the Trump administration is doing. I will note some of it is blue state specific, but some of it is also like applicable for blue cities or blue counties. So, recognizing that sometimes you're going to be in a place that's purple, but you've got a city that's entirely under Democratic control. Some of this stuff applies for you as well. So, 100%, we got to understand state power as a really crucial part of how you are actually holding off some of the worst in this moment. And we've seen that with the redistricting fight playing out.
Kenneth asks, wouldn't this be a good time to push for statehood for the District of Columbia? It would counteract Trump's takeover and set the stage for actually accomplishing it at a future date. DC statehood is an issue near and dear to our hearts. I believe Indivisible was among the top organizations pushing for DC statehood in 2021 and self-determination for Puerto Rico at the same time. We are on board. DC should be a state. DC is larger than two states that have combined 4 senators. DC has no voting representation in Congress. It's a miscarriage of justice. Most Democrats, though not all, are on board with this, and it's something that can be done through a simple act of Congress. You do not need a constitutional amendment to make DC a state. It is also something that we're not going to be able to get done until 2029 at the earliest. Obviously, no Republican administration, no Republican member of Congress will go along with this because they don't want Black people to have representation. And giving DC 2 states or 2 senators and a representative would increase the representation of Black Americans in Congress. That's not something that Republicans would like to see. It's one of the reasons why they're terrorizing the district right now. That's it. It should be a accepted, uniformly held position in the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
Full stop. Full stop. And as soon as there is a Democratic trifecta again, it needs to be one of, if not the first pieces of legislation, a broad pro-democracy package that includes DC statehood and self-determination for Puerto Rico. If you are a Democrat and you are not for this, you need to find a different party. That is my position. This should be a no-brainer.
I agree. I want to just add a more immediate ask here because I think it's really important to call out a dynamic that is happening like quietly right now, which is that a bunch of elected Democrats from around the country have an analysis that they don't want to talk about what's happening in DC. They want to talk about other things. They think that's where they've got more political leverage. They think that's what polls better. Here's the thing. You do not actually have a choice about whether you are going to make it an issue when an authoritarian takes over the the capital and is terrorizing its residents. You don't have a choice about whether you're actually going to push back on that if you are invested in protecting democracy and if you are invested, frankly, in preserving the conditions for protest and for civil society to operate in the immediate future. And so fundamentally, there's this thing that Democrats are doing where they're saying, I shouldn't push back on, the abduction of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. I shouldn't push back on ICE raids in LA. I shouldn't push back on what's happening in DC. I should mostly try to talk about something else instead of winning that political fight. And that is wrongheaded. And you, as a constituent of Democrats around the country, can help to change that by calling them and asking them what are they doing about DC, and basically just giving them the understanding that there are people whose hair is on fire about this in their district, in their state, right now, want to see them acting, want to see them walking around the streets of DC talking about how crazy this is, want to see them introducing legislation or signing on to Jamie Raskin's legislation to terminate this emergency declaration. We want to see action immediately and just demonstrate that the people of DC are not off on their own being brutalized by this dictator. They actually have support and allies and people standing up for them all over the country.
Mm-hmm. A lot of love in the chat for you, Leah, and a lot of good emojis.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to Gilda. Best practices. I keep seeing social media, great unique ways that Indivisible chapters are resisting, but there's no central repository database to capture that. Could Indivisible establish a crowdsourcing webpage where Indivisibles fill in some key info to help searches and groups share their best practices? Gilda, I would point you to the group support hub, because so on Indivisible's website, which actually we are redoing the entire website. It'll be done this year, and pretty excited about it. But on the website now, there's something called the group support hub. We'll post a link in the chat, but we'll also send it around. We've got a ton of resources, and a lot of it is best practices. It's best practices, it's toolkits, it's processes for doing a whole host of things, from running a social media account to running your first meeting to security practices to organizing for primaries. It's got a whole bunch. So I would encourage you to take a look at the support hub. I think it's pretty solid. I think we produce a lot of good resources there for groups. Mary asked, hello from Indivisible Southern Delaware. Hey, Mary. I feel more and massive protesting against what is happening with the National Guard in DC is needed. The message that most people are against what is happening is not getting across. Is there a way we can rally people in Washington, D.C. to stop going to work, shopping, visiting, going to restaurants, etc., as a sign of disapproval? Do you think it's a good idea? Is Indivisible planning any big protests in D.C.? Lee, do you want to talk about Free DC and the current campaign work?
So first, if you're in DC or in the surrounding area, you should be signing up for the email list and of Free DC. They are organizing folks to resist authoritarianism across the district. They are doing regular onboardings and trainings and plugging folks in hyper locally. So please get connected. A lot of what they're starting to do and what they're focusing on right now is kind of like acts of solidarity, defiance, and disapproval. So getting signs in every window, right? Making these visual rejections of Trump. But they're also moving towards a demonstration on August 28th. That's going to be a kind of a collective action focused on both the occupation of DC and the role of Jeff Bezos, Amazon, Whole Foods, the attack on the Washington Post, all the ways in which these things are coming together to crunch DC specifically. As it relates to a bigger protest in DC, I'm sorry, this is one of those calls where we keep being like, we're working on something, stay tuned, but we are working on something, stay tuned. That's the kind of thing where we're gonna work with local partners on that. We're gonna work with the whole coalition on that, because that is something that is, it's not just like Indivisible calls in action in DC. It's got to be everybody collectively coming together to do it. So stay tuned.
But Free DC is doing legitimately good work. I just want to shine some light on them. I think they're really meeting the moment. They're pulling a lot of new people in. They're acting strategically. But
I do just want to reiterate, if you are not in DC, the biggest thing that you can do right now is absolutely flip out at your Democratic representatives. Be like, what are you doing? What is happening? Why are you not as alarmed as I am right now? Call them. We have a call page. Other folks have call pages. We should be just trying to set Democrats' hair on fire here.
Can I pass on one little piece of intel? That there is within the DC ecosystem, so like the Democratic Party ecosystem, including elected officials, there are not a small number of senior leaders, staff, or members who think of the DC occupation as a quote unquote distraction.
Yep.
That, yeah, that's bad, but really he just wants to distract from the economy, or he wants to distract from the Epstein files, and it is a strategic mistake for Democrats to engage there. We disagree. I mean, I think just straight up, we disagree with that strategic assessment. We believe, in this case, authoritarian overreach, the occupation of American city, it is not just a distraction. It might be partly a distraction, but it's also authoritarianism. And we need to organize to fight back. And when you have a strategic disagreement like that within the ecosystem, the folks who win are the folks who organize.
Yeah.
So if you want to see your elected officials take this on, you need to make clear to them that you care about this.
Yeah.
And if you don't make that clear, the prevailing wisdom inside DC is like, yeah, this isn't going to win us the day. We've got to focus on other stuff.
I do want to highlight something that drives me crazy about this distraction discourse, because I think there's like a good faith version of this that's like, that's out there, and I see us talking about using it sometimes. I think so. Let me take a step back. There's a basic idea out there, which is that Donald Trump won in large part because he was perceived as good for people's economic pocketbooks, right? Or good for the economy, good for your pocketbook, right? Like, he won on the strength of some kind of economic appeal. He's a businessman. He knows how to run businesses, et cetera, et cetera. That has led Democrats in general to say we should pretty much only ever be seen talking about the ways in which he is economically harming people, the ways in which he's failing to lower prices, the ways in which he's like not doing these things, not doing the things that he's promised. One strategy for driving down approval on like economic approval is talk about that all the time and highlight how he's bad at it. Another strategy for driving down approval of someone on the economy is talk about all the other crazy shit that they're doing, because they're and accept that because the news cycle is constantly reiterating and focusing on that crazy stuff, people will successfully get the impression that that guy is focused on all this crazy shit and not focused on the economy. Okay, so like part of the way that we actually can win here is it's not that it's a distraction, it's that this guy came into office promising to lower prices. What he is doing is actually all this crazy stuff over here that is not anything like the core promise that he was giving to low information voters, alienated voters, disengaged voters. And the way that we get that through is not by repeatedly saying he promised to lower prices and he's not lowering prices. It's by talking about all the crazy shit he's doing instead.
It's a great summation of our strategic orientation, which is we do want to fight smart fights.
Yeah.
But we understand democracy is a big issue.
Well, and it's not mutually exclusive. Like, I think the idea is if you just talk, like we should take him on the economy, but like part of the way that we stress that he's not actually delivering for people is by emphasizing the places where he is spending his time and his focus, and that they're bad and awful and damaging.
Mm-hmm. Moving on to Gail's question, we talked about this in the group leader call yesterday. There was an extremely alarming article in yesterday's New York Times titled, "The Democratic Party Faces a Voter Registration Crisis." It states that of the 30 states that track voter registration by a political party, Democrats lost ground to Republicans in every single one between 2020 and the 2024 elections, and often by a lot. That 4-year swing toward the Republicans adds up to 4.5 million voters, a deep political hole that could take years for Democrats to climb out of. Is this true? And if so, what can we do to address this? It is true, is the answer, Gail. And this is why we have the orientation towards the party and towards primaries that we do right now. We have to face a pretty troubling fact, which is that we have a would-be fascist in the White House who has an approval rating in the high 30s, and the opposition party, the Democratic Party, congressional Democrats, have an approval rating in the low 20s. The low 20s. That will not work. That will not work out for us. We cannot have an opposition party that is so deeply reviled by the vast majority of the American population and the American electorate. We need a party that is seen as aligned with the interest of the voters. We need a party that voters can believe in. We need a party that people want to register to vote for. We don't have that right now. We have a guy who is absolutely demolishing our democratic institutions, and we should have a party that everybody floods to as a result. But we are not currently capable of making that argument because so much of the electorate and the potential electorate believes politics is all bullshit, believes both parties are corrupt, believes that this is an irrelevant field that they should ignore because it's not worth their time. We've got to give folks something to believe in. And that means, in our minds, we need new leaders in charge so that they can make that argument effectively to folks that we need to register to vote and we need to get out to vote. So I'm not interested in engaging in primaries to settle scores with folks we don't like or to fight niche ideological battles. I think we need to get engaged in primaries to build a party that we can be proud of and that we can sell to the American electorate. So I think it's a huge issue. I think it's a real issue. And this is why we're not talking a lot about what do we do in November of 2026 right now. We're talking a lot about what do we do over the next year to build a party that can win in November of 2026 next year. People are bringing up Mondani right now. I think that's a great example. We have a guy who won a Democratic primary in large part by energizing young voters and people who haven't voted before to vote for him. One wiped the floor with the Democratic establishment, and we've got, gosh, we have Gillibrand, the senator from New York, refusing to endorse. We have Chuck Schumer, the Senate Minority Leader, refusing to endorse. We have Jeffries, the top-ranking Democrat in the House, refusing to endorse. My God, what are we doing here, y'all? We've got some guy who's actually getting more people to believe in the Democratic Party, and the Democratic leadership isn't endorsing him. We can't have a party like this. We've got to be unified. We've got to accept that we're going to disagree in some ways, that there are going to be some folks on the left side and some folks on the center and some folks on the right side of the party, but we rally around the winner and we accept new leadership. And if we don't do that, we're screwed. We are screwed. And I don't think the party leaders are going to come to this conclusion themselves. I think it requires us to organize and demand it. Okay, sorry.
I agree.
I go on one tirade per what's the
stop with those comments.
Okay.
I can't do it better.
Okay. One more question, because just to make up for my little tirade. Jamie asked, we're talking about this internally, actively right now. Can you fill us in on the goings on at Act Blue? As the New York Times reported in March, 7 senior officials resigned, and as the story said, a remaining lawyer suggested he is facing internal retaliation. For those who don't know, Act Blue is just, Indivisible uses Act Blue to fundraise. A lot of local Indivisible groups do. A lot of Democratic campaigns do. A lot of Democratic aligned nonprofits do. It's a major way you get grassroots donations in. And it's being threatened directly by the administration. Leah, thoughts on Act Blue?
Yeah, I mean, so just candidly, I don't have any inside information about like the management of Act Blue. What I will say is that being targeted directly by the Trump Justice Department is stressful and is intense. And part of the theory of what they have been doing when they take particular targets and go after them is they want to cause panic. They want to functionally start a bank run, right? They want people to be like, "Oh crap, I gotta jump ship, I gotta go." They don't have to work the full mechanisms of the Justice Department if our fear causes us to like run away, right? And so part of our response when the Trump administration announced their EO targeting Act Blue was, hey, no, we're not pulling out. Like, this is all super illegal. They will sue. It will, everybody involved will take it to court. Nobody is running away from your threats to core parts of the democratic ecosystem infrastructure. No, there's an entire separate body of work around here, which is that Act Blue is also the mechanism that processes like contributions for a bunch of actors across the democratic ecosystem that we think are pretty scammy and bad and exploitative in the way that they do fundraising practices. And we're part of active efforts to try to get them to crack down on some of those actors. So, I'm not saying like everything is perfect and all of that, but what I am saying is that when some actor is targeted by the Trump administration, that is a time to like lean in and rally behind them. And recognizing that we can kind of hold each other up and work for stronger standards at the same time that we are collectively flanking people who are targeted.
One thing that we're kicking around internally, the team's not going to like that I'm mentioning this because it's really early. I am interested in Indivisible and being part of an effort to push back on scam packs, on the fundraising tactics that we see from some Democratic operatives that just deluge your inbox, and on the scammy practices of email fundraising consulting firms like Mothership. I don't know if folks know Mothership. It's this giant Democratic aligned email fundraising system. I think it's toxic. I think all of this is toxic. Look, the Republicans can be scammy. They are an authoritarian party. They don't depend on grassroots up. They can run it from the top. We're a pro-democracy party. We need to engage people on the ground. And one way that we burn people out systematically is we ask them for money every 30 seconds and say that the house is on fire. And one thing that we did recently, Indivisible gets a lot of our money from grassroots donations. This is how we do a lot of our work. And a big way that we're able to plan for our work are recurring donations. One thing that we found when we analyzed our recurring donations this year was we had a lot of multiple recurring donations, and that's a flag. That's a sign maybe somebody accidentally signed up multiple times to give. And the way most of all these scam packs and some of these other operations run, they're like, ooh, goody, we fooled those people to give us more money. What we did, this is just in the last few weeks, we sent an email out to everybody who gave us a recurring donation. We say, hey, just want a flag. You should check because we've got some multiple recurring donations and we don't want you to be accidentally giving us money. The result of that email was that we increased the number of recurring donations that we got. Some people canceled, and that's cool, but also more people upped the amount that they were giving us and more people joined up to give recurring donations. I think it is possible to run an ethical grassroots fundraising operation. You can do that. You don't have to burn out the entire democratic ecosystem. You don't have to convince everybody on the sidelines that this is all bullshit, just people trying to self-enrich. You can fund operations and do it in an ethical way. And I would like to see Indivisible push in that direction. I think so. It's early stages. I know we've been saying this a lot. Stay tuned, but we are trying to think through how we can be an effective force to encourage the rest of the ecosystem to adopt better practices. Okay, that's 2 tirades. That's it. Thanks everybody for being here. We are 6 minutes over time. Thanks for sticking with us. We're gonna let you go. As always, you can find us at 3 p.m. Eastern time on Thursdays for What's the Plan. That was the plan. We will follow up, like I said, with an email with all these resources and with a survey on No Kings 2. So it's coming soon. Please look in your inbox. We want to get your input on how best to prepare for it, but it's coming soon. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again next week.